This experience that happened to me is something that will stay with me for the rest of my life. And before I get into it, I want to confirm that I won't be using any real names or stating locations for personal and safety reasons regarding my experience, as you never know who may listen to this. I knew my friend, that I will refer to here as Kyle. From a young age, we started school together and lived in the same area. We made an instant connection as we both really didn't fit in with your popular kids and kept to ourselves. We hung out all the time and pretty much became best friends through high school. That was years ago. And after that, we stayed close and always hung out. We both tried college and studied computer science. But at the time, with how we were and our interests in other areas such as weed and drinking, we couldn't really settle and enjoy the course. Plus, having an asshole for a tutor didn't help. We ended up skipping classes altogether through boredom and looking for something new to do. We weren't the partying type. Kyle was a lot like me, and we shared our similar interest in gaming, learning, and studying Bitcoin, which Kyle was pretty good at, and had built up quite a substantial amount through his trading platform, and then learning to become pretty knowledgeable with online social platforms. But after a certain point, that also becomes the normal. We were looking for a new thrill, something to excite us. And then one night, as we sat in Kyle's room and we used Discord to arrange buying more weed, we discussed with people online what was the best ways to cure your boredom, what was the best ways to find thrills online. That's when we decided to use Omegle. If you're unfamiliar with Omegle, it's an online platform where you can talk with strangers without having to register, and it'll pair you up with random people to talk to. If you get bored of one chat, you can move on to the next. As we coasted through chatting to random people, we started talking to them about how we could find crazy and, well, to be honest, fucked up shit to entertain us online. As we went from chat to chat, we weren't really getting anywhere. That all changed when we stumbled upon a random guy who piqued our interest. After we asked the question on what we could find, there was a slight pause. Then they replied, "Ever heard of red rooms?" Me and Kyle were not familiar with what this was. As we stated that, the guy came back with, "What about the deep web?" We both knew what this was, and we'd heard stories of the deep web, but never explored it. The man then laughed as we were amateurs, stating that if we wanted to find real disturbing things on the net, then this is where we should look. But we weren't ready or man enough to do so. We left the chat having argued with the guy that didn't even know us, or what we were so-called man enough to do. Now to me, this didn't bother me. What the guy said went straight over my head. But with Kyle, it was different. He seemed offended by it, as if by not checking out what the guy had said, that we were scared. I told him that it didn't matter and to forget about it. But it was then he decided we should look for the deep web and explore it. We had obviously heard of the deep web and seen films about it, how you could find anything on there from drugs, assault, torture porn, government secrets, you name it. I told Kyle that we should just call it a night, as it was late and we could look into stuff another night. This didn't seem to register with him, as he said fine, I could go home, but he was going to download Tor and search the deep web for these so-called red rooms. I hate saying it, but I didn't stop him. I decided to stay and watch what he was doing, as he downloaded the necessary software to make himself anonymous online. And just like that, we entered the deep web for the first time. There were hives of links, clickable and accessible. We saw a few arms dealing sites and drug trafficking sites, but nothing shocking. And after a few more clicks, and the odd live stream links that didn't seem to work, or we received poor streams, we were under the impression it was all a waste of time. And at that point, we gave up searching. We called it a night, and I headed home and assumed that was the end of it. After a few quiet days and not speaking to Kyle, what I thought was wrong. Late one night, my phone rang. It was Kyle. I answered, And before I could say much, he said to me, "Come round, now. I found one." "Found what?" I remembered asking, and he replied, "A red room." He'd been exploring all day and he'd found one, and was in. "Get here now," he said as the conversation ended. I couldn't believe he'd been exploring the deep web all this time and stuck to it. I thought we were past it and had forgotten about it. But at that point, I got myself ready and headed straight to his. As I arrived, he was home alone. He looked exhausted. He'd clearly not slept all night. He told me how he'd been doing research and he'd found the proper channels and protocols to go about finding these dark places on the deep web's underbelly. How he'd found a link that blocked him from entering with a paywall displaying a lock sign. It was then he discovered how he could pay with the crypto that he had. And that is what he did. He had paid to enter and was now inside to watch a live stream of a red room. The stream hadn't started yet and was still in the process of a countdown. As he showed me, I looked at the low quality of the feed and tried to read the writing on the screen, but I couldn't, as it was some foreign writing that turned out to be Japanese. I didn't know what the hell it said, but it had more writing below in English that said, quote, "Susie likes her hair brushed." Strange and unusual, but that seemed to be the title of the stream. Kyle was so excited at the prospect of seeing a live stream from the deep web, but both of us were pretty much unprepared for what we were about to witness. After a bit of time waiting, the timer stopped and the screen went blank. We both stared, waiting for something. It was then a welcome message popped up and then another saying, basically to its viewers, "Enjoy the show and feel free to engage." A stream popped up. The stream was low definition and black at first. Then the quality seemed to increase somewhat. We couldn't see anything at first. We could only hear creepy, eerie music that could only be described as what you'd hear from an old ice cream truck or maybe an antique music box. Eventually, a light switched on and we saw an empty room. After around a minute, we were beginning to think, what the hell is this? Then a door to the room opened. This long-haired, brunette, Asian woman entered the room. It was kind of laggy, but clearly live. This woman then put her hand up to the camera with the date written on it, which was the same date we were watching. And underneath that, I guess it was a Japanese symbol. She looked really pale and deeply sad, almost depressed. It was clear she'd been crying. You could kind of hear her sniffling, but also the weird music continued to play. Being so transfixed by the woman, it was only then I noticed the other person sitting in the back of the room, in the corner, with some kind of dirty cloth draped over their face. It was then apparent, when the woman turned, you could see she was clearly afraid of them and trying not to look. It sounded almost like the other person was wheezing or deep breathing. Then the woman started to undress. She was definitely underweight and I began to freak out. The whole thing had a horrible feel to it. For some reason though, I didn't look away. So I saw the moment. She picked up a pair of large scissors and showed them to the camera. Then the woman started to cut off all her hair until it was pretty short, and her sobbing was way more audible. I was so creeped out at this point I could barely move. The person with the draped material started to bark orders at her in Japanese. What happened next, though, was even more disturbing. The memory of it still stays with me today. With trembling hands, she took the scissors and with one hand, pulled at her eyelids and with the scissors cut at them, screaming as she did, until the skin was split and blood flowed from her skin around them. I almost couldn't believe it was real, the way she stared into the camera, like she was dead inside. At this point, I almost threw up and looked away, but I could still hear the sounds from the laptop. The person barking more orders at this woman who was a shivering, crying mess by now. The woman slowly pulled out her tongue and placed the blade of the scissors either side. I could see what was coming next and didn't have the stomach to watch it as I turned away. I don't think the woman did it, but from the sound and the angry screams, it was clear the other person did it for her. The harrowing screams I could hear as I told Kyle to turn it off. Kyle hadn't taken his eyes off the screen out of pure shock, but I actually had to leave the room. But the stream soon ended when the torture was over and the camera was knocked over suddenly and the feed ended. Either way, I was so shaken by it. I was so glad I didn't see the rest and that we hadn't used my computer. Both of us stared at the screen, a sweaty, shaken mess, as we saw comments popping up in the open chat box, inexplicably condoning this behavior. It was what happened next. I wish I could have stopped. Kyle started typing as he sent a message calling these people absolute animals and scum, and what they were doing was inexcusable, threatening to report them. That was when the moderator from that forum got back in touch with us. Kyle suddenly had a private message in his inbox with an image attached to it. It took it a while to load, pixel by pixel, but when it did, my skin literally crawled. It was a webcam freeze frame, taken only seconds earlier, of me and Kyle watching the live stream, and attached after, Kyle's full name and address. Immediately, I knew Kyle and I were being threatened. I remember shouting at him to switch it off. Eventually he did, but after hours of panic and silence, that whole night we stayed awake paranoid and genuinely terrified of what we had seen and been through. The next day I went home, unsuccessfully trying to forget everything. All I wanted to do after that was to be alone and stay at home. And I did. I didn't speak to Kyle for a few days, nor did he try to message me. I just wanted to try and forget it all. About a week after, he left me a misspelled, clearly drunk text on WhatsApp asking how I was. Regretfully, I didn't reply. I didn't want to talk, as it just reminded me of that night. But that was the last thing he sent me. A week later, I ended up getting a message from his sister, who claimed he hadn't been home for a few days and they couldn't contact him. They were worried, asking if he was with me or if I knew where he was. I didn't. I hadn't spoken to him since that night, and hearing this made me concerned. I tried ringing him, but all it did was go straight to voicemail. This worried me. I didn't know what was up, but I couldn't help but think it was something to do with what we did that night. The night passed and I couldn't sleep. Another week went by, and again, none of us heard from Kyle. This had now become real, and his family reported him as missing. I felt physically sick. I didn't know what to do or if I should mention about the last time I saw him. I kept quiet as I was overthinking everything, fearing for my safety too. Then, late one night, at around 2:30, I receive a phone call. And it was from Kyle. I answered, blurting out his name as my heart raced, only to hear static, like someone had put a phone next to a ceiling fan. Then the noise seemed to get quieter and I heard someone breathing. Something in me knew it was Kyle, so I asked if it was him, and in a voice that sounded like his but very faint, it started sobbing. I desperately tried to ask where he was, but there was no reply. There was another noise in the background. Something like music or a girl singing. Maybe it was my mind playing tricks, but I couldn't help but think it sounded like the same song from the video. When the phone hung up, there was no way to call him back. And since that night, I never received a call again. And now, you can't even get through to his phone. Distraught what had just happened, I told his parents about everything. I don't blame them for hating me for not telling them sooner, but I was so scared. The police ended up finding his car in the woods. His belongings, wallet, cards, driver's license, all still in the car. This is still being investigated. I pray he somehow gets in touch with me or he's out there somewhere. But a bigger part of me fears the worst. I just wish he'd never went looking for those red rooms, and that I could turn back and stop him and just have my friend back. I still live in fear, looking over my shoulder and think about him every day. So please, whatever you do, take this as a warning and don't mess around or even look to explore the deep web. The deep web had been a subject that had fascinated me for a long time, something I'd heard many stories and rumors about. The endless supplies of content you could find on there that you just wouldn't see on the everyday web. As you all may know, there are layers to the web itself, and the deeper you travel, the more disturbing content you can supposedly find. And that is what intrigued me. From what I'd heard and researched, there were parts of the deep web that you could find anything, from strange cult worshipping, hitmen for hire, private personal information leaks, government secrets, kidnap, torture, even the ability to order mystery boxes containing who knows what. Literally, the possibilities are endless. Now, I'm a 28-year-old male, and I feel I've seen enough crazy and weird things online before, but in all honesty, I wasn't ready for what I did find, and it still plays over in my mind today like a reoccurring nightmare. I'm a bit of a geek when it comes to technology and love using the internet for my own pleasure and gain. Now, before accessing the deep web, I had downloaded the encryption program Tor and Tor browser, as the deep web is not accessible from your regular search engines, for example Chrome or Internet Explorer. I made sure my VPN was in place, as obviously I didn't want my location known and visible to others on this side of the web. When everything was in place and I was settled in one night, I planned to get myself on the deep web and actually see it firsthand for myself, what it was all about, and if the things we actually hear are true or not. I was off work the following day, so this was the perfect time to have a late night and see what I could find. When I first began, I clicked on the hidden wiki websites, reading through the warnings before I quickly proceeded. The page provided a lot of useful links to click on. They were very vague, so I really didn't know what the links contained subject-wise. So I clicked on a few to see where they took me, seeing as this was my first time. After clicking the first link, it seemed to take ages to load, but when it did, I was on another page that again contained a load of links, but this time, the links were to direct websites. I first copied a few links into the browser that ended up leading me to drug trafficking websites. Not something I was particularly interested in, but it was cool to see all the types of illegal drugs you could get dispatched to you from a few clicks of your finger. I wasn't looking to buy anything off the deep web, though. I was here for more than drug websites. After an hour or so of browsing, I took a break. I hadn't come across anything noteworthy or anything that grabbed my attention yet. That's when I got off the page I was on and loaded up another link. This one took me to a blank, black page. I thought it was a dead link and was about to click it off when I just about noticed something in the bottom right corner of the screen. There was a dark gray text, literally nearly blending in with the page. I hovered the cursor over it and the text highlighted. It was another link. I clicked it, and straight away I was taken to another page. This time another black page, but this one contained a list of descriptive links in pink text. I began to feel like I was onto something here and began checking out the links. The one I clicked first ended up being the only one I clicked that night, and you'll soon know why. As I entered a new page again, the screen was black, but not for long, as the top of the screen it read, Grade A Meat Market and Barbecue. This was the site. In the middle of the page was a warning advisory box, and then a terms and conditions text pop up on the screen. I read through both. The warning, advising you that this site is for willing participants, interested patrons, and buyers only. As I said earlier, I wasn't looking to buy anything, but that didn't stop me. as much as I wish it did, from clicking the enter button. What I had stumbled upon, I was not ready for. The site loaded and the first things I saw made a chill run down my spine and my skin crawl. The first thing that greeted me was a promo-type video of what the site contained. And just from the name, I should have known what it was going to contain. The video was a big chunk of meat, cooking on a fire pit on a skewer. The video soon cut to where the meat had come from, with a person screaming in agony tied down as a butcher hacked their leg with a massive meat cleaver. It then cut to cooked meat being finely sliced and placed on a plate, with a man sitting at a table as he began to cut into the meat and eat it, before it cut off to an ad. Order and buy now the freshest, best prime meat you can imagine. I felt physically sick, but I couldn't divert my eyes. What I had gained access to was a fucking cannibal website. I should have clicked off then and there, but I didn't. You might think why? Because as real as it looked, I just couldn't believe what I was watching. I was that shocked. So I continued to scroll and investigate the site. What I saw at the top was sadly just the beginning. The site contained many disturbing images, but what freaked me out the most was the forum section. People openly talking about how they were looking forward to sampling a different part of the body, talking about the best ways to cook human meat. It really disturbed me how many people were casually on here and were literally talking about and asking questions about how to eat people. Then I saw it. On another page was an order form where you could pay, submit, and order yourself parts of the body. Not only that, but you could choose what you were looking for from gender, race, age, nationality. It was insane. People would actually pay thousands of dollars as the prices started off that high. This was an actual meat market. Firstly, let me just say I can't understand any of this. What possesses another human to enjoy this? But the next thing I saw, I really couldn't comprehend. There was a form where you could submit yourself to be used. You could literally give yourself to be used, to be cooked and eaten. People who had a sick fantasy of being eaten, or maybe somebody that was looking to end it could do it this way, and that is truly insane to me. I could feel the sweat dripping down my forehead, but I couldn't seem to take my eyes away or click off. And in that moment, I made the dumbest mistake, as I'll never be able to unsee what I saw. I clicked a feed that was titled Live Links. Livestock Cook. A video feed popped up. Then I saw the comment box below with other viewers typing. In the view was a massive metal barrel hanging in the air on a stand. Underneath it was what you would see in a fire pit. The camera was moved closer to the barrel, towards a circular hole near the top. The hole at first was completely dark and seemingly empty, but then a wide eye peered through from the inside. I couldn't see anything else but the eye and the sounds of crying. The camera moved back so the whole barrel was in view. It was then a man in a butcher's uniform walked into view. He poured fluid all over the coal underneath the barrel. My heart began to race. After he had finished with the liquid, he pulled out a lighter as he struck a flame. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, as the comments poured into the chat box, demanding that the man do it, to cook the poor soul in a barrel. And with no second thoughts, he lit the fuel under the barrel and the flames shot up, engulfing the metal container. The screams of the person in the barrel blared through my headphones. My heart pounded and I was physically heaving. The sound of screaming sent shivers through me, and I couldn't bear any more of the wailing. I clicked off the link as fast as I could and turned off my computer, just sitting there in the dark for what seemed to be forever, contemplating what I had just seen. I had literally witnessed somebody being cooked alive, and that still sticks with me to this day. The awful images, the ordering of flesh, the sounds of the scream. I struggled to sleep for a while after that. It was the last time I went on to the deep web. I can't lie, I was looking for it. I wanted to see and uncover the darkest of the deep web. I thought I wanted to see it for myself, and if it really was out there. But I wasn't prepared for what I did find. It really does show us that we do live in a sick world. Take it from me, these things are out there on the deep web. Please don't let curiosity beat you like it did me. Do yourself a favor and stay off of the deep web. Just a quick one, guys. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed these disturbing stories. Why don't you comment down below which one would have terrified you the most if it were you in that situation? Also, don't forget to subscribe just over to the left and look out for plenty more upcoming content by hitting that bell button. If you can, like, comment, and share. It really helps us out, and I really appreciate it a lot, you guys. Let us know what story subjects you'd be interested in hearing soon in upcoming videos. And thanks again. Take care out there, and remember, fear lies within.